Hello, it's week 10 of season 3 of the Andy Griffith Show. This week's episode title is Opie's Rival. Barney, let's tell them about Opie's Rival. Andy and Opie are having a nice day going fishing together. And Opie catches a big one. So they take it to shore and they cook it and they eat it. And then Opie wants to become blood brothers with his daddy. And his daddy says no to the blood tart, but instead he takes ashes from the fire and he puts it on their arms and he makes a speech. And then he says, "We are now blood brothers." And Opie is happy with this. And they go to town and they see Nurse Peggy, and they tell her about the nice day they had. And Andy says, "Why don't you come with us next time we go fishing, which will be tomorrow morning?" And Peggy says, "Okay." And Opie, the audience can see from his facial expression that he's not happy with this because he just likes spending time alone with his daddy. And then the next day in the fishing boat, Andy spends more time with Peggy than he does with Opie. And then he pays a lot of attention to a little fish that she catches, but no attention at all to a big one that Opie catches. So Opie throws his fish back, all disgusted and disappointed, but his daddy doesn't see this. And then later at home, Andy is getting ready for a date with Peggy, and Opie says he feels sick all over. And Aunt Dee says there's nothing wrong with him, but Andy calls Peggy anyway to cancel their date, because he says Opie is sick. And that makes Opie happy. And then the next day in the courthouse, Opie is sitting there alone. Andy had gone somewhere. And Peggy comes in to talk to Andy and says, "Opie, I thought you were sick. At least you were last night." And Opie says, "No." And she says, "Oh, well. Anyway, can you give your daddy this message for me?" And she writes it down. It's a change of meeting place for their date tonight. And she says, "It's very important that you give it to him." He says, "Okay." But then she leaves, and Opie kicks the message into the trash can, because he still feels crowded by Peggy. So, of course, Andy and Peggy don't meet up that night because Andy didn't get the message. He goes to the old place that they agreed upon, and she goes to the new one. So Peggy calls Aunt Dee and asks where Andy is. And Aunt Dee says she's sure he'll be there soon. And then Aunt Dee has to go on an errand, and she tells Opie to tell his daddy if he sees him that Peggy is waiting on him over at the drugstore. And Andy calls his house and talks to Opie, but Opie purposely doesn't give him the message. And then when his daddy gets home, Opie makes sure to be in bed so he doesn't have to talk to him. And then Aunt Dee comes and gives Andy the message. But Peggy shows up at the house, really angry, as Andy is walking out to find her at the drugstore. And she thinks this is now the second date that Andy has broken with her for no good reason. And Opie sees her yelling at him from his window. She's saying, "Don't you ever call me again." And after she leaves, Opie comes down to tell his daddy that he only acted sick the first date, and he threw away the message on the second date, so he admits it's his fault that Peggy is mad at Andy for both of these times. And Andy wants to know why Opie did those things. And Opie says he's scared his daddy will keep paying more and more attention to Peggy, and someday won't want Opie anymore. So Andy takes Opie into his lap, and he says he loves him more than anyone in the world, and that nothing will ever change that. But Andy says he still needs the companionship of a lady sometimes. He says he might even get married again someday, and he and Opie make plans to go fishing the next day, just the two of them. So Opie feels better about it, and he goes to bed. Yeah, Opie feels so much better about it that the next day he goes to invite Peggy himself to go fishing with them. And he repeats what Andy said about companionship of a woman and getting married, and Andy tries to keep him quiet. We've missed you for 2 weeks, Barney. Are we going to see you in next week's episode? Yeah, you sure will. Number 11, called Convicts at Large. Great. We'll see you all then.